Hi, everyone. Today, I'm going to be introducing the Elisa's Diary TDA prompt. And we're going to focus on finding evidence and finding quotes. This is often really challenging for students because it takes like that little extra step to actually go find in the text evidence that supports. Most students prefer to just sort of say what evidence, and they don't like to go back and find the quotes, but you'll find that it's actually pretty easy, and I'm going to walk you through that today. So Elisa's Diary TDA prompt, let's first read it. The theme of a story is the message, central idea, or lesson in a work of literature. Hey, we've done TDAs that have had the theme before. And our day 3 skill for this lesson, this story, was theme. So you might already have some notes, and you may want to bring up your day 3 skill assignment so that you can see what you chose as the theme. The theme is revealed through the character's actions, the character's dialogue, and the character's thoughts and feelings. They gave you 3 things, which may be 3 good main ideas. The first way the author shows the theme is through the character's actions. That could be a main idea sentence. Second main idea sentence. The next way the author shows the theme of is through the character's dialogue. Dialogue is what the characters actually say. You'll use a lot of quotes for that one. And then the third or the final way the author shows the theme of is through the character's thoughts and feelings. So you kind of have your main ideas already. That's exciting. But we're going to focus on evidence today. So what is the theme of Elisa's Diary? How does the theme of the story impact the conclusion of the story? Use evidence to support your response. So depending on what theme you picked, whether it was kindness or cooperation, you're going to show or talk about a little bit how it impacts how the story ended. Why was that important, that theme? And then I have the hint. You may use your day 3 graphic organizer. So here are the common themes in books that we worked through on the day 3. If you haven't chosen one, you'll want to read through and choose one. Your first step is going to be to do the introduction. Please see my introduction video. Now that I've introduced it, Mrs. Schmidt and I expect that all of you are able to write the introduction as well as in that video. So please rewatch that video when you write this introduction if you forgot the components of the introduction. Okay, and then we talked about the main ideas here. So you kind of have an idea of what the main ideas will be. Now, this is the section we're going to work on is text details and evidence analysis. What does the evidence mean? So if you choose your main idea to be the first way the author shows the theme of is through the character's actions, then you're going to look through the book and you're going to find events and quotes that are going to support that. Then here, the analysis. The analysis is in your own words. What does that evidence mean for your main idea? Or if you used a quote, what does the quote mean for your main idea? And I'll show you what I mean by that. How does it support it? And so then we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I was thinking we could use the story that we all have read and remembered, Package for Mrs. Jewls, so that I can show you a little bit like what you're supposed to do as far as theme, or as far as evidence and quotes. So the prompt was just to refresh your memory. In A Package for Mrs. Jewls, the author uses many elements of humor to write an entertaining story for students. And so we had this big graphic organizer, and we had these different funny, humorous things that happened. Now, let's pretend that the main idea, the first main idea we chose was the first way The author shows humor is through, I'm going to use funny or unusual events. The funny or unusual events in the story. Perfect. Boom. All done. So there was our main idea. So now we have to think about what was funny that happened, but even better, go back in the book. So if I think about what I thought was funny, I think the spelling bee was really funny, where Lewis had brought the package up and his hands were full. It was really heavy. And then he's like, I can't open the door. And she says, Mrs. Jewell says, let's do a spelling bee in order to find out who gets to open the door. And there's Lewis still holding onto his package. And you know what it's like to hold heavy things. You want to set it down as quickly as possible. But Mrs. Jewell was like, no, let's do a spelling bee. The other thing that I thought was funny about the spelling bee is she would say spell package, and they would say BOX, package. So I really thought that section was funny. So the rule of thumb is maybe choose one piece of evidence that you remember, like what happened, but the other piece of evidence, actually pick a quote. And so I'm thinking that what I thought was funny, let's see, is right here on this page. So the first one they spelled correctly, heavy, said Allison, Heaby, heavy. So it was good. But the next one, tired, Sleepy. Okay. So you could say Mrs. Jewell's held a spelling bee to see who could open the door for, I'm running into the other door for Lewis. And I'll make this smaller because there. Many of you probably do that too, where you write big and then you make it small so you have a little bit more room. Okay, so Mrs. Jewell's held a spelling bee to see who could open the door for Lewis. If you hadn't read the story, you were like, oh, that's nice. Kids like spelling bees. No problem there. So we have to tell them why it was funny. This part of the story was funny because Lewis was waiting outside the door, holding on to the heavy package. So that is why it was funny, is because he was outside that door and he was holding on to that heavy package. So you have to kind of tell them what is funny. Now, we need a quote that also. And so why don't we try the quote where they actually misspell things? And you could say in the passage, Mrs. Jewell's. So we could say in the passage, we could just say Mrs. Jewell's. The students spelled the synonyms for the spelling bee words. And I think I want to capitalize spelling bee because it's the name of a competition, I think. Now, I'm looking at that. I'm like, you know what? I think we want to use a quote. So you could even use the quote on your analysis, or perhaps maybe this is part of the analysis. So I think I want 2 sentences. If you think you can't explain it well enough, then you can do 2 sentences. So here it says, package, said Jenny, B-O-X, package. So I'm going to put it in here. Okay, so, and make sure you say the text says package, BOX package. Okay. All right. So then you could say, this is funny because spelling bees do not work this way. It is a very unusual spelling bee. Don't be limited by the amount of space. You know, if you have to make it smaller, however you want to do, I often suggest my students to go ahead and write their sentences in the graphic organizer. I mean, sometimes it is nice, I have to say, to just write kind of what you're going to write and then expand it. But if you don't want to forget anything and how you want to explain it, sometimes it's a good idea to just go ahead. You can zoom in like this up here with this plus button almost as much as you want, and then make your writing over here, your font size, as small as you want. That way you'll be able to not limit yourself with the space. So always use at least one quote in each of these boxes. And I know that no student wants to go back and they want to like look for the quotes, but it is very important. And on the PSSAs, when the PSSA scorers score it, they look for those quotes to make sure that you are quoting the text. But just make sure you preface it with the text says or the book says. Now, the last part I just want to talk about, even though we weren't really doing this, this part of it, to make a connection back to the main idea. So what they want you to do is to use this evidence, the evidence that you provided, and your own knowledge of the topic to explain how these pieces of evidence prove your main idea sentence or how it answers the prompt. So you might want to talk about how both of these are very unusual, and that unusual events and unusual actions through funny or unusual events, yes, how they add to the sense of humor. So you could say unusual or funny events create a humorous tone, and then you could say the spelling bee was both humorous, funny, and unusual. So you can leave it at that and just show that, yes, these are contributing to the humorous tone. So I hope this helped you in some way. Please remember in each of these boxes, use at least one piece of evidence and one quote. Now, do you notice how I kind of ran out of room? Like some of you that are amazing writers, you're saying, okay, Mrs. Flagg, there were other funny things. You just focused on the spelling bee. I wanted to mention Mrs. Mush's mushrooms, or I wanted to mention the paper airplanes being thrown from the top window. You could always add on. And I believe there's a way to even add a page. Oh, we have extra room down here. So here there's an extra page always. And I think in each of them, you have an extra page that you can always just put like an asterisk. And then you can say an asterisk looks like that. It's like a shift 8. And then have, say, see more below. And then you can type as many as you want, because being detailed is what you get points for. as well as following the graphic organizers and whatnot. Okay. So I don't want to limit you by the space that's on this graphic organizer. Mrs. Schmidt and I would be very happy to allow you more room because like just the spelling bee wasn't the only funny or unusual event. Okay. Great work. Keep up the good work. And I do hope that this helped. All right. All right. See you next time. Bye-bye.